Hello everyone, my name is Raging Raptor and welcome to a new World of Tanks super test video. And today I have some exciting news because it finally looks like we can understand what Wargaming's balancing master plan is for 2020. It definitely looks like Wargaming wants to make a big update where they introduce tons of balancing changes, because today we're going to look at 4 tanks getting nerfed. 2 of which I was crying out aloud for ages to be nerfed. Well, it is the Object 430U, the Object 430, the Progetto M56 and the Standard B, or Standard B, which are going to get nerfed. And yes, again, Wargaming did say that they want to implement those changes, or they are continuing working on implementing selective balancing changes for the heavies, and now they want to make some balancing changes for those medium tanks. Specifically for the Italian tanks, they said that they feel like good players are having a too easy time to perform well in those tanks, because for experienced players those tanks give a lot too many tools to be effective. And for the Soviet tanks, they say that basically they have everything which makes them OP or strong, which is mobility, firepower, armor. It's basically the trifecta of being good in this game as a tank. So yeah, I guess let's start with the changes of my most hated tier 10 tank, the Object 430U. So, Wargaming once again is trying to do those changes they tried like 1.5 years ago, where they said, hey, we want to change the gun handling of the 430U, and they are exactly doing that again. The biggest thing is they do want to change the dispersion on the move and hold travars from 0.12 to 0.16, which makes it far worse and far more comparable to like a heavy tank, and it makes it, as far as I know, one of the class worst on tier 10. The dispersion during turret traverse also is getting nerfed from 0.1 to 0.12. Sadly, there are no nerfs to its, to its accuracy, or aim time rather, which I also consider to be in very strong. However, if you decide to compare the 430U to the 121, now the 121 on gun handling wise definitely has a little edge over it. Sure, aim time is still worse on the 121, which is still kind of mind-blowing, but yeah, the 430U definitely now has a lot worse gun handling on the move and on the turret traverse, which I think is very well needed, because the previous or the current gun handling is just insane for what the tank is offering us. But yeah, Wargaming also has decided to nerf this tank's armor. Sadly, I want to say that the nerfs are a little bit, I think they are not big enough. You can see them on screen right now, and yes, it is good that the cupolas are getting nerfed from 324 to 278 effective armor, and from 293 to 274 effective armor. Still, I do want to point out that this is, this is a tier 10 medium tank, which has cupolas which basically cannot be penetrated effectively by any tier 9 medium tank, which is not shooting premium rounds. Right now, when you're shooting premium rounds, you can basically forget penetrating those cupolas. But, it's kind of awkward in my opinion that, for example, the 113 has 200 millimeters of effective armor and is considered a heavy tank on the cupolas, while this tank has 280 or 275 if we round it up and down a little bit. I think the nerfs should be more. There should be more. It's great to see that Wargaming is nerfing the 430U. I really do hope that those nerfs are coming through, because the 430U is overperforming. And because before somebody is saying, but Raging, you have a 279 and Chief Tard, and yeah, you don't want to get them nerfed. No, that is not true. I do want the 279, I do want the Chieftain to be nerfed as well, because they are breaking game balance, especially in competitive gaming. But I'm glad to see that finally there is something to be done against the Object 430U. I still consider that Wargaming should change at least one cupola to be around 220 millimeters of effective armor, because this would raise the skill level of this tank by quite a bit when you have to start thinking, where can you hide this cupola, It's like the same thing like the old Tortoise, where you have to side scrape around specific corners to be very, very strong, because if you didn't, anybody could penetrate your cupola. It's still a little bit like this now, but they did change the cupola quite drastically on the Tortoise. So yeah, I think the changes are very well implemented, but I always think on every single parameter, especially on the armor and on the aim time of the tank, that still could be made changes to make this tank even less effective and still make it enjoyable to play for most players. But nevertheless, I'm happy to see that Wargaming decided to finally add some nerfs to the Object 430U. Again, make the cupolas around one at least around 220mm effective. Again, let the people use their brain when playing this tank. To the Object 430. There is not really much changes to be made except for also gun handling. They changed the gun handling for hull traverse and whole movement from 0.14 to 0.16, which is comparable now to the new Object 416, and they also changed the accuracy on the turret from 0.1 to 0.12, which is also mirroring the 430U. I still think those are also some good changes. I do think that when you are, hull down in the 430U, it's still very, the 430, excuse me, not the 430U, the 430, it's still rather strong-ish, but it's not as bad as the Object 430U, especially if you consider that the 430 has some very exposed 40mm plates, which can be easily penetrated by anything which has a 122mm gun. Nevertheless, I think that those changes make the 430 less effective, especially when it comes to snapping, which is great, so I'm going to leave it at that, and we are moving on to the Progetto changes. It's interesting to see that Wargaming decided to nerf the Progetto 56 and the Standard B quite substantially, because I did consider them to be I consider the Progetto, or the Italian medium tank line, to be easy to play, hard to master. Why exactly easy to play? Because literally everybody can spam their rounds out and do a decent amount of damage. Imagine you have around 1260 or something burst damage on the tier 10 vehicle, which is a lot if you ask me. So that is very, very easy to use in that kind of sense, even though you have less alpha damage than other 105mm guns on tier 10. On the other hand, if you really want to be effective, you need to think, should I use DPM or should I use burst damage? So this is what I think is easy to play, hard to master. But if you master those tanks, they are very, 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 very strong. You could see that they were one of the go-to medium tanks for ranked games. Why? Because not only do you have consistent damage, like every box standard tier 10 medium, you also have the burst potential of an AMX 30, Batchet Leon 25T, for example, or AMX 50B. You have the burst potential with your gun on the Progetto. So yeah, it comes to no surprise that Wargaming decided to change some characteristics. Most notably, they removed the opportunity to use a gun rammer on this tank, effectively taking away 10% of your DPM, which is quite, it is 10%, it is a lot, The other thing which is also very interesting is they did change the turret traverse, which is not that bad. However, the aim time is very, very substantially nerfed, from 2.1 to 2.5 seconds. They did increase the dispersion after firing a shot, which is obviously saying, hey, go screw yourself for, trying to burst, and they did change the accuracy from 0.33 to 0.35. I'm still a little bit on the awkward side about these changes. I don't know how effective this DPM change will be, especially as soon as you can't use a gun rammer anymore on those tanks. You will most likely decide to use a GLD, a gun lane drive, or maybe optics if you didn't use them already, or vents if you didn't use them already. So for me personally, for my playstyle, I will usually use the GLD, the gun lane drive. So the changes to the aim time will only be marginal compared to maybe other people, So it will be hard to judge. I think Wargaming shouldn't have changed the DPM. I think they should have changed the time needed to burst, From, for example, 2.5 seconds maybe to 3 seconds on the tier 10, and maybe from 3 seconds to 3.5 to maybe 3.25 on the tier 9 vehicle. This is my personal opinion. The accuracy changes, I think, are understandable, so are the aim time. Turret traverse, I don't really care. It will be very interesting to see how exactly the increased dispersion after shooting will be and how it will affect the potential burst of this tank. Let's move on to the Standard B. For the Standard B, Wargaming decided to change every gun, or the 190mm and the 105mm for the stock and the top turret. I'm going to just gloss over them and just concentrate on the top configuration, because this is what everybody is basically using. For all 4 configurations, Wargaming did again increase the dispersion after firing a shot, which is understandable. And for all versions, they did increase the aim time and the accuracy. Or they'll decrease the accuracy and increase the aim time. So now let's have a look at the top gun on the top turret. So here, most importantly, the aim time goes from 2.3 seconds to 2.5 seconds, and the dispersion at 100 meters will go from 0.35 to 0.37. Again, they removed the ability to mount the gun rammer, and they decided to nerf the power to weight ratio from 21.8 to 20 by reducing the top engine's, well, power output. So yeah, it's very interesting. I do consider the Standard B also be a very potent tank if you know what you're doing. Imagine it has the mobility of the normal Leopard PTA, but it has the opportunity to have a 3-round burst which has around 1000 damage, which is a strong amount of burst damage in my personal opinion, if you consider this to be a tier 9 vehicle which can see tier 7s, you know. So yeah, I think that the Standard B changes are decent. Again, maybe it is a little bit too much. We did have already a discussion in the Discord, in the CC Discord, where a lot of people were saying, I don't like those changes, they are going to destroy my favorite tank, and so on and so forth, especially when it comes to the Progetto. Nobody really complained about the 430U changes. I simply don't know if this is the right approach, because an inaccurate gun is always infuriating, because then you are having to roll the dice more often than when you have a more accurate gun. I would have liked Wargaming to have an approach like with the Sharpshooter 4, where you have a long interclip reload time to try and, for example, destroy the burst potential of those tanks, and maybe push the focus more towards using, you know, towards not bursting. That is my point. I want to see how those changes pan out. In the end, it is the super test, you know. Things can still change. Interestingly enough, basically Wargaming is saying that after 1.9.1, we are going to get update 2.0 or update 1.10, which is going to introduce all the mentioned super test changes of E5, IS4 and E100. It's kind of interesting, but also kind of annoying, because it will once again delay the very needed E100, IS4 and E5 changes. But yeah, again, I'm leaving a link or all the other changes to the other guns on the description below. And yeah, that's everything I'm having for you today. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, if you think the 430U changes are well needed, or do you think they are well done? Do you think that Wargaming could have gone further, or do you think they are too much? The same goes for the Progetto changes. I think right now the Progetto changes will be a lot more controversial than anything else. I do consider the Progetto to be an incredible strong vehicle, so I do understand where the nerfs are coming from. But it is kind of awkward seeing that the 430U is a lot easier to play and has a lot bigger impact in theory for every skilled player, or for every skill class of players, while the Progetto is getting hit a lot harder in my personal view. But then again, this is my opinion. My name is Raging Raptor, and if you enjoy such videos, then let me know that with a thumbs up and a subscription. Obviously, it's not costing anything you, and it will only give you quality content of a Swiss stupid Bobby boy, which sometimes does videos and sometimes knows what he's talking about. My name is Raging Raptor, thank you so much for watching, have a great weekend, and as always, thanks for watching. Cheers guys.